Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolfe, Cris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. My name is Jenna Wolfe. His name is Cris Carter. He's the Hall of Famer. And that, as always, is Nick Wright. How's everybody doing today?
Good. How was your night?
I had a I was okay. It was a good night.
Okay.
Okay, so let's set the stage for Nick.
Yours?
Nothing. Huge nap. Watched some sports. Stayed up late.
Awesome.
All right, Here we go. Tee it up, Nick.
I got kicked out of a painting class I paid to be in.
A sentence he's never said before.
Listen.
But you're getting some culture to you, though.
Getting some culture?
Yeah, so I really like it. Was great to follow you on Twitter and everything, but I didn't think you'd get kicked out.
I did a little New York City painting class with my wife. I finished early. I decided to turn on League Pass on my phone, catch the end of a Pacers game. It was close late.
Yep.
And I got asked to leave. So I had to spend the end of the class in the hallway.
Love it.
Nice 22-year-old lady who I believe to be at least somewhat intoxicated kicked me out of her class. But
if you want to see some of the fantastic artwork that Nick did, go check out his Twitter page.
Yep.
Get Nick Wright. All right, we're going to start with the NFL MVP. And on opening day this season, there were 1,696 players in contention for this honor. Fast forward to right this second, we have trimmed that number to 2. It's a very healthy trim. But Vegas has made it clear that this is a two-man race between Tom Brady and Todd Gurley. And after watching Ocean's 11, I never argue with Vegas. CC, I will ask you, does Todd Gurley deserve serious MVP consideration over a guy by the name of Tom Brady?
Well, this is the thing. Because of the significant number of injuries that we've seen, not only at other positions, but at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers. We saw the same thing with Derek Carr, but later in the season. So he had already had a significant season that he could actually be considered. So there were more people typically involved in the race than we see this year. Mm-hmm. You have Tom Brady, who, regardless of what the speculation is, he's the best player on the best team, having a tremendous season. Todd Gurley, and the only way that you can even get in this conversation is if you're performing at a historic level and or you have some type of turnaround either in your organization or you're at a record-breaking pace as far as points being scored. You know, Todd Gurley and his impact on the Rams and on the NFL, yes, he should be in the conversation, but it's the way it should be. Tom Brady's had the best season, but Todd Gurley, you should look at the totality of his work and be like, yes, he should be in Vegas. Typically, they got it right. He's the second high favorite as far as the ranking or money. How much money do you have to put?
So Brady's a minus about 150, Gurley, or minus 180, Gurley's plus 150. So Brady, those are the two guys. Brady's about 3 times as likely, according to Vegas, to be the MVP, but no one else is even better than 30-1. So those are the two guys that are in contention, according to Vegas.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be. If Todd Gurley is second, it makes you should go back and look at the numbers to be like, wow, what kind of season this guy has had. And if you took in consideration the lack of productivity he had last year. 3 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago, he was great.
Yep.
Last season, he was disappeared.
And to see where he is now, it's amazing, and it should be one of the stories that we should be talking about.
Wait, just quick follow-up for something you started earlier with. Do you think that if Carson Wentz and Aaron Rodgers and maybe even Deshaun Watson were all healthy, still playing?
There's no doubt.
There's no doubt still be Tom Brady, or you'd have a bigger, lengthier list?
We would have more to debate. But if Tom Brady, Deshaun Watson was playing amazing. If Aaron Rodgers does what Aaron Rodgers does, or we have some type of team that has an amazing season, Carson Wentz, amazing, and the team was amazing.
Yeah.
So the conversation is totally different, and those odds would speak to that.
Rodgers and Watson, to me, are two big unknowns because they didn't play enough. Wentz would have won this thing. I truly, firmly
Deshaun
believe.
more so than Aaron because we've seen when Aaron's healthy that he's going to be one of those
He's going to
guys.
be in the contention no matter what.
Yes, but you are right.
But my point is, even as great as Aaron's been, we don't know what his season would have been. We know what it probably would have been. I think Wentz would have won it. Wentz still leads the league in touchdown passes. Wentz is still top 5 in some of the counting stats, not per game stats, even though he hasn't played the last
And we should mention
games.
he is in third place. It's a distant third, but he is in third place.
And so I think...
But the optics have changed because they haven't seen him on the field.
Right.
So people were like, I know he's hurt. I'm not going to vote for him.
Correct.
But as I mentioned with Tom now, because Wentz is hurt, Tom has the best record on the people being considered.
Sure.
Right. Wentz has the best record on the best team.
Right.
So if he was still in it and healthy, yes, that would be a game changer.
So a few things that I want to get to. Yes, absolutely, Todd Gurley should be considered, and I'm going to kind of retract something I said last week, because I realized last week I thought I was being a little hypocritical. I had said when we talked about Antonio Brown that I didn't like that because wide receivers had never won it, Antonio wasn't going to be considered. And then last week when I was asked about Todd Gurley, I said, well, the only way a running back's ever won it is 2,000 yards or set the touchdown record. He's not going to do either of those things. That's the only way a running back's run it in the last 25 years, so throw him out of it. Then I thought about it, and I was like, but I don't like the way it's always been done. Jenna, I know, you said in your intro, and I know you write those things, you do a great job with those things, that there are 1,696 people eligible for this award. Unfortunately, that's not true. It should be true. Theoretically, it should be true. Every player in the league should be eligible for it. But the way they've done it, it's the 32 quarterbacks and maybe a handful of running backs who could win it. So if Gurley wins it this year without having 2,000 yards rushing, he has 2,000 yards from scrimmage, without setting the touchdown record, just like, you know what, this guy's been awesome. No other quarterback has really just lapped the field the way Brady did when he won it in 07, the way Peyton did his second year in Denver. You know what? Let's give it to him. And here's the other part of it. Tom Brady's closing push has been underwhelming.
Yes.
Can we show America what Tom Brady's done in the month of December? Because it's jarring. Tom Brady, in the month of December, 12th in completion percentage, 12th in yards per pass, 29th in touchdown interception ratio, 21st in passer rating. He's thrown more picks in December than every quarterback in football except Deshaun Kaiser. So if that's your closing push, so think about this. Prior to December, Carson Wentz was your MVP. Wentz gets hurt. So Brady just gets it by default despite not playing well in December. Gurley's closing push. Anyone that plays fantasy football knows this. You know who won your fantasy league? The team that had Todd Gurley, because the last 3 weeks he's been remarkable. Like, that to me is a compelling argument for him.
Yeah, I think you really I can't remember there being the few number of candidates, but also I can't remember that we saw the difference in one person being on the uptick and Todd Gurley and the Rams, and even though that New England have won 2 out of 3, but in that, Tom Brady has been underwhelming. And like I told you before in the Pittsburgh game, we were looking at the Pittsburgh game, you said, well, Tom Brady could play well and they'd lose. I said, I can't remember.
Right.
We got a couple instances now where he has not played well, and they've been able to win games.
There are instances of Tom Brady playing poorly and them winning. What you were saying is there are not a lot of instances of Brady playing really well and then the Pats losing. The opposite has happened, but that one hasn't. Go ahead, Jenna. I'm sorry.
No, it's just that it's sort of a chicken and egg kind of thing. This has become a passing league, right? This is what we see. We see these guys throwing a ton, and so because the NFL is now like that, we're going to see these numbers, and I don't know if you call them inflated, but much higher numbers for quarterbacks. It hasn't really changed that much for the running back position.
But Gurley, and that maybe is an argument for Gurley. He's been an incredible pass catcher. He's been the best pass catcher running back in football. He has 6 touchdowns as a receiver. He has 600 yards plus as a receiver. The best argument for Todd Gurley is not that he's first in rushing yards, is not that he's first in receiving yards amongst running backs, it's not that he's first in yards from scrimmage. It's that he has lapped the field in touchdowns. He has scored 19 touchdowns this year. Second place is DeAndre Hopkins with 13. So if you think about that enormous gap between his touchdowns and anyone else's, here's my question to you, though, CC. He's not going to play this week. And I wonder, it's a weird thing the Rams are doing. The Rams can't get a bye. They could be 3 or 4. They seem to not care if they're 3 or 4. They know no matter you're 3 or 4, you have a home game, and then you go on the road in round 2. They don't seem to mind if they end up being the 4 seed. Gurley, if he played this week and had a big game, would have a shot at entering the top 10 all-time yards from scrimmage. Do you think the fact, because McVay's made the decision that Todd Gurley is first or second in the MVP conversation should play into whether or not Sean McVay plays him this week. So that level of individual honor. I know typically individual awards doesn't matter. This is the highest individual award. Should that play into it at all?
No, because you're jeopardizing the rest of the roster and jeopardizing their team goals for a guy that we don't know what he's going to do. But why would you risk injury to, if he does not play well, how well are you going to do in the playoffs?
Right.
That is the question. So the thing that, if you want to make history, make the Super Bowl. I mean, they're at 11 wins. He's had an amazing season. Like Denny Green used to say, if you ain't get it accomplished in the first 15 games, the team goals at the end of the season are the most important, and they'll supersede any individual goals that you have.
One last push for Brady. Despite a very shaky December, he still leads the league in like 4 or 5 different categories right now, first. And again, a lot of that is because some of these other guys are out right now.
No, he's first in passing yards. He's almost first in passer rating.
Attempts, passing yards, yards per attempt, games without getting hurt, where you have to sit out the rest of the season. That's the big one at the very end, right?
He's had a tremendous year.
Hey, coming up, Dez Bryant holds himself in pretty high esteem. We'll discuss next on First Things First. Hey, let's move on to players who make a ton of money, have a terrible season, and still feel like a pay cut is off the table. You know, dime a dozen story. And oh yeah, Dez Bryant. Despite failing to go over 100 yards in any of his 15 games this year, he's not pointing the finger at himself. The Cowboys missing the playoffs. Take a listen.
I feel like for the most part, I can only do what, you know, I can control. Yeah, in bitter times, hell, you know, frustrating, you know, certain situations, you know, that I couldn't control. But other than that, I believe who I am. I'm a hell of a football player. I know that. I believe that.
They come to you for a pay cut. Are you cool with that?
Whenever I haven't heard no talks about that. But if it come, well, I don't know. Probably not. Hell nah, man. I believe in me.
All right, CC, there's a lot to discuss here. There's salary cap, there's the way he played, there's all of it. But bottom line, should Sunday be Dez's last game as a Cowboy?
That's really hard to say because let's look at the amount of money. Over the next 2 years, they're going to pay Dez like $24 million. If you look at the receivers that are making $10 to $14 million, is he worth the money? So either you're paying him for what he's done or you're going to pay him for what he's going to do. And that's kind of the dilemma because he is descending in his productivity. Now, even though he's not that old now, so he's playing like an older receiver. He's playing like he's already in his 30s and compiling numbers like he's in his 30s. And he's not in his 30s yet. Like, Dez is 29 years old. And that's shocking to see at this point. He should still be in his prime as one of the great athletes that's played the position over the last 10 years in the NFL. Dez, to me, would still be maybe 2 or 3 more years in his prime before I start to see him decline. There's only a few receivers in the NFL that once they reach 30, that they have been as effective as they were in their 20s. Right now, we have Larry Fitzgerald. He is the standard bearer in the NFL as far as productivity, and now being, I think Larry's 33. Last year, Pierre Garçon, he was over 30 and had 1,000 yards. He ended up getting hurt this year. Last year, Edelman, he was 30. He had 1,000 yards. He ended up getting hurt this year. So there's not a lot of guys in the NFL. You would think that, wow, receivers are far more productive. They haven't been that productive in their 30s. So for me, it's a huge concern. I think he will still be on the Cowboys. I don't think his is his last game. I don't think that's the answer. But when you are making the kind of money he's making, you have set yourself up for the organization to come to you and ask you to take a pay cut. These are the things that have happened to other players. Is Jerry going to do that with Dez? That's the part I don't know. But I do expect Dez to be on the Cowboys in 2018.
All right, first I want to respond to something you said, which is the short list of wide receivers in their 30s that have had huge years. That is a short list. You know what is an even shorter list? You know what is a list that is 0 people long? The list of wide receivers that had been great, had 3 bad years, and then been great again. That doesn't happen.
Right.
So, like, it's already long odds that a guy at his age, even if he had just sustained excellence, was going to further sustain excellence. But nobody has the career trajectory of up, 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 Pro Bowl, Pro Bowl, Pro Bowl, awesome, bad, 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 and then back there, unless that bad, bad, bad is due to fluke, devastating injury. One injury, you miss a year and a half, and then you come back.
Not being paired up with a guy like Dak Prescott. Right. That's not something you can point to.
No, there's no precedent for it. Especially, I wouldn't blame it on Dak, but let's say it were Dak. Dak's going to be there next year. So it's not like that's going to change. They're not bringing in a new quarterback. Dez Bryant next year, on his current contract, has the third biggest cap hit of any receiver in football. $16.5 million. CeCe's right that his salary is $12 million, but because of the way they do bonuses, he has $4 million there. $16.5 million. You can't just look at that and say, well, he's not $16.5 million receiver, get rid of him. If they cut him, they only save $8 million. So what you have to ask yourself is Dez worth $8 million? And at his current production, the answer to that question is no as well. The receivers who make around $8 to $9 million, Kenny Stills, Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, Brandon Cooks, Mohamed Sanu, all those guys are better than Dez right now. All of them had better years than Dez right now. Show Dez his numbers this season. Just show the audience where he's at. What is he? He's not in the top 20 in anything. He's not in the top 80 in yards after catch. The only thing he's top 15 in is targets. He still gets targeted like he's great, but he's not. And so even though you only save $8 million, to me, I think the Cowboys could better use that $8 million on a different receiver. So the answer to my question is, should this be his last game as a Cowboy? For their purposes, I think the answer is yes. Right. I think you can get better at that spot.
Yeah. One of the things that's hard for me is I try to reconcile in my mind how much better a football player I was at 31, 32 compared to being 27. So I actually went back to look at where I was athletically at the same time Dez is right now. I believe Dez is a really good athlete. I'm not going to say Dez is a better athlete than me, but I would say our skill set could be comparable. And at 29, I felt like I was just entering into my prime. And when I was 29, Nick, was the 1994 season.
Okay.
The first year we had Warren Moon. Do you remember what I did in that year, Nick?
120 catches.
122 catches.
There you go. Sorry,
and then you
2.
Yeah, and then you always get on me about my touchdowns.
12 touchdowns?
7 touchdowns.
7. Oh, remember? The next year was the big year. Touchdown year with Warren Moon.
Next year you at 30, I had 122 again and 17 touchdowns.
So you averaged 12 touchdowns the 2 years with Moon.
So I saw myself ascending. So I can see where people can get better. I just don't see, because those 3 seasons leading up to that. Now, I had extenuating circumstances my first 4 years before I went to Minnesota and was able to get things together. But I do believe that guys can improve. I've seen Larry Fitzgerald do it, which is very, very rare. So I still hold out hope that guys, they can learn the game and the game would slow down. The biggest difference with Dez and, say, where I was, that Tom Moore, Brian Billick, Denny Green, they moved me in the slot.
See, hold on. You knew the offense. The biggest difference was you were teaching guys the offense. The biggest difference was by the time you were 30 years old, you were an offensive coordinator on the field.
But I had to change, though.
Right, but with respect, Dez isn't all of a sudden going to go from a guy who, from a mental acuity standpoint, is only going to be able to play one spot to where all of a sudden he can play all the spots and teach guys.
But on top of that, you sat here and you've told us many, many, many times issues that Dez has had. Like, he's had some separation issues. He's catching the ball here and not there.
Right.
Those don't seem to me, maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, things that all of a sudden, when you turn 30, you're going to start to change. Like, those are the things you did when you were at the top of your game. You're not going to suddenly change those when you go into your 30. He just doesn't seem to be putting himself in a position where he's going to flip himself around and make himself so valuable to the Dallas Cowboys.
Part of it was how I approached the game, but part of it was the coaching staff realizing my skill set and they put me in a winning situation based on they knew that I knew all the positions.
So what could they do for Dez then?
This is what's discouraging. You saw last weekend they put him in the slot. Dez is not decisive in the slot. That's why they had that interception. Yeah. So when you see that indecisiveness, it really hurts a young quarterback. You get turnovers, and that's what we're seeing with Dez. That's the part, to me, that's the most discouraging. They can't move him anymore.
Welcome back to First Things First. We welcome in one of our favorite guests, Eric Mangini. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you.
Big handshake. Get that out of the way. Why are you shaking your head, CC?
I thought but I had nothing I can do about it.
I know.
No, you can't stop that.
I'm a little
you can only
disappointed
try to
with
contain
one of your favorite guests.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
Well, listen, you're my favorite guest, but I don't want to make other people feel bad.
She wants America to know she writes her own stuff. She wrote that, Coach.
One of my top 10 favorite guests.
Hey, Eric, you're my favorite. You're right here.
Okay, good.
All right, let's start the program. Coach, we're going to start with the Steelers. You would think a team at 12-3 and locked into a playoff bye would be free of drama. But much like my circle of friends, Coach, you know them now, Marcy, Aviva, Dara, Marnie, you know the whole gang.
The
Drama is all around us. And there was quite a stir in the locker room following the release of James Harrison and his subsequent signing with the Patriots. All-Pro center Marquise Pouncey was particularly outspoken on the topic. Take a listen to this.
He erased himself. He erased his own legacy. Let's be serious.
Erased the legacy, really? It's pretty strong.
You don't think so?
You tell me, it's your locker room.
I would think so as a fan. It's crazy. It blows my mind. He wanted that. It wasn't like the team said, oh, we're going to let go of James Harrison. James Harrison wanted that.
You wanted out?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to read the stories like this is something that he wanted to do, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like, oh, they got together and said, oh, we're going to go cut James. Like, no, that's not what happened. And he needs to come out and admit that.
There's some fighting words right there against a former teammate. What was your reaction to the general resentment towards Harrison from that Steelers locker room, Coach?
Well, I understand it. At this time of year, when a guy leaves and he goes to your potential biggest rival in terms of getting the playoffs, I understand how things unfold there and the feelings that are related to that. And then when he says that Harrison says the things that he says, which paints the Steelers organization and the head coach in a negative light, the guys are rallying behind it. And what's more surprising is that none of this had gotten out during the course of the season. Yeah. During the course of his time there, the things that they were talking about with him falling asleep in meetings, with him leaving the stadium when he was inactive, with him unwilling to mentor the younger players, that to me is more surprising that none of that got out. But I do understand the emotion of the Steelers players in terms of wanting to defend their organization, their ownership, and their head coach, and you appreciate that.
All right, well, let me just ask a couple questions for that. I think I know the answer, but I want to ask them anyway. Falling asleep in meetings, how often does that happen?
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable. So even if especially from a guy...
Does it happen? Yeah, but you go wake him up and you get him to pay attention.
If you're on the game day inactive list, are you expected to stay at the game, or is it okay to go home?
No, you stay and watch the game. You're part of the team.
No, do we know other guys in the league have been reported to have left the stadium? Yes, but it's not the normal.
It's not. Right. It's not the normal.
And it's frowned upon.
Well,
yes.
This is the thing, because if you're not playing, you're on the scout team. So you're still on the team. When you go through the playoffs, you get the Super Bowl, everyone gets the same reward. Scout team are starting quarterback and the head coach. So if you're not making plays, I'm either trying to help my team on the scout team, right, or when I'm at James's position, I am there 90% as a mentor and as a tone setter for the organization, what they would allow and what they won't allow. But one of my main responsibilities at the end of my career was to make sure that Randy Moss was going to be great. So when they drafted someone, as in J.J. Watt's brother, TJ, when he made the final day roster, when you are a veteran player and you make the final day roster, your whole salary is guaranteed for the whole year, all right, once you're a vested player. So now you're not playing every game. You know your role is to get that guy ready to be a star for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers veteran players did the same thing for James Harrison. So that's part of his responsibility. Now, a lot of veteran players, They don't feel that's part of their responsibility. And we saw with him, he didn't embrace it. He didn't help the younger players. But this is a part of what you're supposed to do and when you're in the twilight of your career, and you've had a career like him in Pittsburgh, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, that's what the question I wanted to ask you. Like, I understand Mike Tomlin's not the general manager, but I don't think they are bringing James Harrison back without Mike Tomlin being okay with it, without Mike Tomlin wanting him back. When you sign 39-year-old James Harrison to essentially a league minimum deal, a little over the league minimum, and you are the Steelers, by the way, who have an amazing history at that position, at linebacker, from before James Harrison got there, and they're trying to continue it with Dupree, certainly with T.J. Watt. One of the major reasons you are spending that money and using that roster spot on him is to show the young players how to do things, teach them.
Like CC said, he's got to be willing. He's got to have it in him to want to do that. And there are players that just don't care.
No, Jenna. You don't keep a guy, or James has shown through the years that he was doing these things.
Okay. And this has been a big part of the program for a long time. I remember with Bill Parcells, he'd call them hold the fort guys. And those are guys that have been very loyal to the program, that have contributed a ton as a player, who you may keep a year longer than you really should, but their role is to mentor, to set an example, to be in the locker room. You expect those things. Now, I don't know what kind of conversation Mike Tomlin and James Harrison had prior to the season in terms of clear expectations.
Yes.
And that's an important thing. You got to be able to have that hard conversation with the player and say, look, this is what we want you to do. We hope to get you 10, 15 snaps a game if possible, but if not, we expect you to be able to do these things.
But also, Coach, in that role, if a young player like TJ flashes, which he did in the preseason, which he did the first month of the season, they haven't been good at rushing the passer the last couple of years. So this was a need. So when the kid flashes, transitions from college to the pro, whatever that commitment I made to you, it might be decreased based on the younger player.
Well, and as an older guy, you know that. You know the way the league works. At some point, your time comes, and you have to transition out. And if you don't want to play that role, then you probably shouldn't have signed the deal that you did.
You mentioned hold the fort, guys. I'm going to bring up a name that I'm sure it's a guy you have a great affinity for, Mike Vrabel. So when Scott Pioli took over in Kansas City, one of his first moves was trading for Matt Castle. That didn't work out great, but he had thrown in to the Matt Castle deal, Mike Vrabel. Not because Mike Vrabel was going to be some great playmaker at that point in his career at linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, but because they were trying to instill a new culture of young players, and they wanted a guy who they could say, this is how you go to work. This is what is expected of you. And Vrabel has now transitioned to coach. He's coaching with the Houston Texans, and he's a coordinator candidate, if not a head coach candidate, very soon. Like, what's surprising to me about James Harrison is Harrison probably, I don't want to get in this debate, he's probably not a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He has Defensive Player of the Year award. He's probably the level right beneath that. But he absolutely could have been a Steeler Hall of Famer, a Steeler, whatever their Ring of Honor is, their all-time great thing because of the Super Bowls, because of the Defensive Player of the Year. And for him to, I don't want to say do irreparable damage, but to do damage.
Yeah, I don't think it's irreparable. I think this is a few years from now.
Forget about that.
Yeah, this will all pass. But you make a great point about Mike Vrabel. That's exactly why you bring an older player in. And Curtis Martin used to make the point all the time that the most important part of any child's day is the time they spend on the bus, because there's no parents on it. So the kids that are on that bus shape a lot of what happens, and a lot of things can take place there. And it's the same thing as a locker room. And you want some people in that locker room to help everybody else see the right direction.
And James Harrison was in a great situation because at his age, not only being coached by Mike Tomlin, because James Harrison is not a dude just going to walk the straight line. Like, he's been fortunate that Mike Tomlin has been the coach, and the culture that they have in Pittsburgh has led to him having a great career. But how you finish that career, Mike Tomlin's his head coach. Joey Porter is his position coach. So let me tell you what Joey Porter is. There was a clear understanding of what his role was. I know Joey. Joey is a good coach, was a very good player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I don't.
What do you mean by that? You mean Joey's not afraid to tell him eye to eye, here's what we expect.
Yes, and that's what Pouncey was explaining. Harrison did this to himself. As a veteran player, you can do things to let people know that you're not happy, and you force the team to cut you. So that's what Pouncey was saying. This is what James wanted. He was acting. He wanted to get cut. And veteran players, that's what ends up happening to them when they're not satisfied with that role.
That being said, Belichick wants a guy like this in his locker room?
Well, it's different. It's different because now
he's here to help him do one thing.
Well, once you leave the protection of the team that drafted you or the protection that you have a legacy with, it's different when you go to the next team and you either fall in line or you
on the plane flight to New England, all these guys do a transformation. They swallow their pride. Yes, sir. It's the Patriot way. They come through that front door.
And that's
yes,
it.
sir.
No more sleeping in meetings. No more leaving if you're
sleeping in the meetings.
Okay.
That's not going to happen. Because they know they don't want to be the one that screws it up. You know, those guys that come in, they've got an excellent opportunity to get a ring, and they don't want to be the one that's the reason they don't. Now, the important thing to understand here is he may not make it to the Steelers-Patriots game if those two teams play. This could be a one-week situation.
I said that yesterday. It's a tryout.
And he could be back on the street very quickly. There is no benefit of the doubt that's taking place in New England.
And because he signed, his salary is fully guaranteed. And because he signed with New England, they're not obligated to keep him for the rest of the season. Right. As a veteran player picking him up late, he's week to week, check to check. Right. So if his attitude, he better check his attitude at the door, because if not, he'll be checking out in New England next week.
Back here on First Things First, we welcome in Cris Broussard to talk all things NBA. What's up, Cris?
Good to see you, man.
I'm a little bothered. I heard you say Eric Mangini was your favorite guest.
I go segment to segment,
You know
Cris.
this national
Cris,
TV.
I go segment to segment. Dude, segment to segment. We welcome in our favorite guest of all time, Cris Broussard. Cris.
Thank you. That's
great to
more
see
like
you.
it. Now
Absolute favorite guest ever in the history of humans. All-time greatest human. Hey, how are the Oklahoma City Thunder exactly like my 2-year-old? Both still trying to figure it all out, both learning about playing with others, and both love juice boxes.
So they're just like you as well.
I just had to wait, Cris, long enough, and that comment would come. After a slow start, the Thunder beat the Raptors 124-107 last night. That's 6 wins in a row. Russell Westbrook leading the way, 30 points, 13 assists, 8 boards. Paul George scored 33, Melo at 18, and he seems to have figured out the key to the team's success. Take a listen to this.
I think the fact that Russ is just playing, not trying to defer to anybody, to any one of us, just playing his game and letting us play off of him. I think he's much more effective by doing that rather than deferring to myself or Paul. We need that Russ out there, not the one who deferred to us. Like, let us figure it out.
Let's talk about the ceiling with this Thunder team, Cris. If Russell Westbrook plays to his full potential, his MVP potential, how far can this team go?
I'm going to say Western Conference Finals. And I think they can put a scare into Golden State. They'd like to get the 3rd seed so you can avoid Golden State. But there's no guarantee Golden State won't be the 2nd seed.
Right.
Houston could be. So I definitely think they beat Minnesota if it's a 4-5 matchup. I think they can beat Houston and San Antonio. And I think they could push Golden State to 6 games, a tough 6 games. Here's why. Russell Westbrook's athleticism and explosiveness is so unique that it catches teams off guard. And it gets teams out of sorts. You saw it with Chris Paul in the Clippers series back in 2014. There were people in the Clippers organization that told me they felt like Russ's athleticism over the course of 6 games just finally overwhelmed him. And that's what Westbrook can do. So I think they can go deep. And I think we need to dispel this myth or notion that Westbrook's not a winner. If you look at his career, now he hasn't won a championship, obviously, but if you look at his career, he is, for the most part, I would say, come close or maximized his team's potential virtually every year. In 2010, or since they got to the finals in 2012, every year he's had his full complement of players, Kevin Durant or Serge Ibaka with him, they've gotten at least to the conference finals in the West. 2015, Durant's hurt almost the whole season, played 27 games. They win 45. Then last year, with no help, and I don't want to hear about Oladipo, how well he's playing now. He's a different player now. He didn't shoot as well last year.
And if he would shot that way, he wouldn't have got traded.
Yeah, exactly. They won 47 games in the West with little help. So Westbrook is a winner. He's not one of these guys that always goes out in the first round. So, yeah, I think they can go deep.
I think it's very empowering that when you have people that have been successful, and regardless of what you think about Carmelo Anthony, he's a national champ from Syracuse. He's been a phenomenal scorer. He's made a lot of money.
Gold medal winner?
Gold medal winner. Well, I mean, who was they going to lose to? But, you know, I know you're Syracuse. You're trying to look after him. But,
he's got about 8 gold medals, doesn't he?
You know, but amongst his friends, like, he's a very successful person. Like, when you see Carmelo walk into a place or into an NBA locker room, NBA players don't look at him and say, you know something, he didn't reach his potential. He's a successful, not only a basketball player, but as a business person, he's successful.
First ballot Hall of Famer, don't you? I think.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Now, when that person, even though he's never been with this franchise, when he empowers the guy in Russell Westbrook that is his franchise, he's the only one who stayed there. Everyone else left. Harden left. We know KD left. Harden stayed there. Russ knows it's his franchise. But for someone like Melo to say, you know something, man, that's the player that we need. Even though Russ knows it empowers him to be himself so that he doesn't have to acquiesce to Paul. I want Paul to be comfortable. You know, he's in the last year of his contract. I need him to be happy. I need him to feel comfortable here because that's the only chance we have to win. Well, really, the chance to start with Russell being special. When we had Randy Moss, at some point I just had to tell him, young fella, listen, take over, man. Yeah. Like, you're capable of doing that. It's not that he didn't know it, but me being the leader, when I was able to relinquish that, it gave him the freedom to be even better and even a better leader. And I think that's what we're seeing with OKC.
I'll talk about their ceiling in just a moment. I want to just stay on Russ for a second. I want the Thunder to be successful, and I want Russ to be successful because Russ, more than any player in the NBA, and maybe more than any athlete that comes right top of mind in sports today, plays the way we say we want our kids to play. Every single night, all out. People can say, analytically, maybe he shouldn't. Maybe it's not the. He doesn't care. He lives and dies with the winning. I understand does he hunt triple doubles if they're up double digits? Sure. Whatever. Who cares? Like, we've seen him in games that they already have won. He tries to make sure, let me grab this extra rebound. I don't care about that. He never does that at the expense of winning. When he takes those bad shots, it might be misguided. It is because he wants to win, and he thinks it is the best way to help his team win. When I hear people knock Russ for his style, it rubs me the wrong way because no player in the league, including my favorite, LeBron, plays nearly as hard every night as that guy does and as he has his entire career. You cannot watch a Russell Westbrook highlight and tell, is it the conference finals or is it game 37? Except unless you see the logo on the court, because he is going all out. So I want him to be successful. As far as how successful can the team be, I think the only team in the West that has a shot at beating a full-strength Warriors team is the Rockets. And it's a long shot, but they have a shot because of three-point shooting. The Thunder, though, are right there if something happens.
So you don't think the Thunder could beat Houston?
No, I do. I do think they could. I think the Thunder could beat anyone in the West except for Golden State. Yeah. Unless Golden State, listen, if Steph turns his ankle again, if the Golden State is not at full strength, then I think the Thunder can get them. If they're both at full strength, I don't think they can.
Their biggest problem, regardless of we talking about Melo, is he just going to be a spot-up shooter now? You talked about that. It was a great point, how they made changes. Russ taking over. Man, as long as they have Roberson, they can always rest Steph on him. So as long as he's on the court, all right, they do not match up with Golden State. Golden State also has that switching defense, but Steph can mainly stay on him and rest. And Klay can slow Russ down a little bit because of his physical body. Now, to me, if something happened to Klay, they would really be hurt against OKC because Steph would have to guard Russ more.
Well, and now you see, and look, Roberson is huge for them because of the defense. But you see Ray Felton and Westbrook playing together a lot. And that frees Russ up to just do some scoring and let Felton run the offense. But that's a great point. If you can get Roberson out of there, now you can force Steph to guard
even
somebody.
In last night's game, they had Hacker Roberson. Like, he's such a bad shooter and a bad free throw shooter that they're fouling him intentionally so they can get possession of the ball.
Now, I like Jeremy Grant, too.
Where did he go to school? Sorry, go ahead, as you were.
You get him because he's not Roberson, but he can defend, too. He's athletic. You know, you can go with a lineup, even if you have George at the 2 and Grant and Melo and Steven Adams.
Nick said, where'd he go to school?
Yeah.
Where'd he go to school?
I said it, Syracuse.
Who from Syracuse plays some dang on defense? I almost said something else.
I don't know.
Who from Syracuse plays any defense?
Because they sitting at 2-3.
Thank you. And then you get to the NBA.
He has the potential. Because he's athletic and he's long.
He's athletic, so he might decide.
He could be a good defender.
But all the rest of the Syracuse guys can't defend.
Nobody has ever. I can't name
Boeheim, that zone is killing them.
Let's put our wide vision goggles on just for a second, because we've spent more days on this show than not talking about what's wrong with this Thunder team, why it isn't working, why these three haven't found a way to work together. Now, all of a sudden, they found a way to do it. I guess that's the difference. My question is, what was it? What was the one thing they found? And tell me what the next 3 months look like. Like, what could they do now that they're at this point?
Well, first of all, when you have three guys who are used to being the first option, or 1A, as in Westbrook to Durant, their entire careers, and they're ISO players, it's going to be tough to come together.
But
like
they
Durant,
knew that when they put this team together.
It's easy to say, and I think they all meant it. Russ said, I'm going to defer. I'm going to get these guys involved. Melo and George were like, we'll all fit. But your game is your game. Your game is your game.
And they didn't have a choice of going to OKC. All right? Like, it wasn't like they had their option, like they were free agents. All right? Paul George got traded.
Yeah.
All right? Melo
got traded.
Yes.
Melo okayed.
He okayed it, but yeah.
Yes, but they didn't have a choice. That's why they ended up there, to answer your question.
But Durant, you look at Golden State, or even the Boston Big Three with Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett. Those two, it worked right from the beginning, those two teams, because their games were complementary.
Ray was off the ball.
Yeah, Ray was off the ball, Paul's a slasher.
Kevin Garnett, you didn't need to run plays for him. Yes.
Yep. Durant fits into that ball movement. He's a great catch and shoot guy. So, but Miami with LeBron and Wade,
it was redundant skill sets.
Yes, and that's what this is to some degree. So, but I think going forward, look, Melo, he's in his 15th year. There's nothing he can do individually. He could average 30, and it would not change his legacy one bit. But if he averages 17 or 18, and they get to even the conference finals, or who knows, maybe the finals or win it, that would change his legacy completely.
Yes.
Back to the Cavaliers. They lost 109-95 against the Kings last night, their third loss in 4 games. Dwayne Wade very emphatically called this a rut. Not a great game for Cleveland. LeBron with just 16 points on 6 of 17 shooting and some very, very shaky defense. He might be dealing with some serious frustration. Here he was before the game when asked about how he's been officiated lately.
For me, the worst thing is when I actually go and talk to the ref and they say it was nothing. Like, I go over, you didn't see that? No, I didn't think it was anything. There's no call. It's no foul. Like, that's the worst for me. If he says, you know what, I may have missed that one, or, you know, maybe I wasn't in the right position. But when you see the ref right there on the baseline looking at the whole play, and you go up to him and you say there's no call multiple times in the crunch time, that's the frustrating part. And for me, it's even more frustrating because I know how I'm officiated at times.
I think I would put a shirt on before I presented my case to the judge. I mean, sir, look at me. Scrawny me.
Right.
I keep getting fouled.
I'm getting knocked all over this place. Yeah. Like,
I said it earlier. It's one of, there's not many, but it's one difference between men and women. We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't take our shirts off and say, okay, gather
Jenna
around,
Wolfe
guys.
is never known to post videos
but I'm always covered.
without a No, you have a sports bra on. You post shirtless videos on your
Twice I went
Instagram
there.
every day.
I'm 0 for 2 for going there.
yeah, there's a reason why you're cold in the studio. Right? Yes.
I ripped the sleeves off
Those
before we
sleeveless
started.
dresses to see these pipes.
Cris Broussard, I'm not going to flex for anyone. Gosh, I love you and love you at the same time. Does LeBron have a reason and a right to be frustrated with his gripes against the NBA officiating?
Let me say this first. LeBron is not, coming out of nowhere and just lashing out at the refs, okay? He's being asked questions, and he's just being honest about his answers. So I don't think he has an agenda. There's no ulterior motive, to get to the ref. He's just being asked about the officiating, about the calls, and he's giving answers. Even when he said Durant fouled him twice, he ended it. What are you going to do, though? It wasn't like he was trying to drum up this, story about the ref.
Right, and he also said that he had lost the ball.
Yes, yeah. When he actually got fouled, they said he got fouled on that one, too. So that said, look, nobody wants to hear LeBron complain about the officiating. Shaquille O'Neal didn't complain about the officiating, and he was getting hacked on virtually every possession. But that said, LeBron does suffer in similar ways to Shaq because he's so big and he's so strong and he can finish through contact that a lot of times the refs let stuff go. This year, he is scoring more points in the paint than he has in his entire career. You would think, that being the case, that his free throws would be up, or at least close to where they've been.
Right.
They're at a career, or not a career low, but the lowest since his rookie year. 5.9 attempts a game. For a guy that's scoring in the paint that much.
And historically, your rookie year is your baptism. I don't care how good you are.
And they're not giving you
They're not going to give you any calls.
So he's, a superstar. He's certainly not getting any superstar treatment. And, he's getting fouled. He's getting hacked. And they're not calling it because he really should be going to the line more than 6 times a game.
You mentioned 2 key points there. I want to start with the first one, Shaquille O'Neal, because this is the example everyone uses. Shaq, in every game he played in, except for the games against Yao Ming, was the biggest guy on the court. LeBron is never the biggest guy on the court. You cannot ref LeBron the way you did Shaq. Shaq was 7'2", 330 pounds. LeBron is bigger than guys his speed. He's bigger than guys that play point guard, which he does at times. But he is not, and he might be more physically fit, like more ripped, more rocked up than most guys. But he's listed at 6'8", 250. Let's call him 6'9", 260. That's still not, he is not this Goliath in the league.
He's not the tallest. But the league isn't, you don't have as many bigs on the floor either as you used to.
And you have all the spot-up shooters, so the lane is a lot more open, and you can't steer guys with the hand checking. Now, this is the part that I disagree with you. We have seen 6'9", 260. We have seen, but we haven't seen it that fast, that could go above the rim, that could dribble with either hand, can finish at the rim with either hand. Like that we haven't seen. So when LeBron has the ball on a break or on a semi-break, to me, he is just like Shaq. We've never seen it before.
That size. He's Karl Malone size.
But guess what?
He does.
He should get every single benefit from that. There should not be any part of the game where it's like, oh, well, here's the thing. Kevin Durant, who's taller and longer than LeBron, but has decided for his game he doesn't need to be muscular, he's going to get the benefit. No, LeBron worked for that. LeBron, one of the reasons he's successful in year 15 is because of the body that he has and the idea that, oh, he can deal with it. He can handle the contact. Like, I just reject it. And the other thing you mentioned, though, was superstar calls. LeBron gets the opposite of that. Whether people like it or not, in the NBA forever, the superstars get more calls than other people. It's one of the reasons why Steph Curry is shooting more free throws per game than LeBron. Steph's shooting 6.5 a game. LeBron less than 6. Like, Steph's a superstar. So if you contact Steph, he is going to get the call. LeBron is the league's biggest superstar and not getting the calls that he's got.
LeBron is not getting the superstar calls, but LeBron is able to take 2, 3, and 4 steps. Now, they give him that. He is doing 2 Euro steps. And they're giving him that. Now, you can complain about the foul call.
But is LeBron the only guy? Isn't Harden doing that? Isn't Giannis doing that?
LeBron does it to me, based on what I'm watching. Yeah. LeBron gets away with an extra half a step more than any of the other star players.
How much of it, Cris, is brand? Is this, you say you call it the superstar effect, but he's LeBron James and he's bigger than life, and we know that, and yet they treat him as bigger than life sort of when he's playing on the court.
Well, that being the case, he should get the calls.
Wouldn't support
he's the Michael Jordan of this era. We all know Jordan's last shot against Utah. I mean, he clearly pushed Brian Russell off and shot the J. So LeBron's getting the opposite of what his brand is. I mean, he is the biggest. He's the face of the league. You would think he would get the superstar calls, like you said. But LeBron also flops. You know, he's cut down on it over the past couple years when they really started, honing in on it. But he's been a flopper. So, it goes both ways. Look, I understand the frustration because he doesn't get the offensive calls that he should. But to your point, he gets away with some extra steps. He flops, and a lot of times they let it go. So I don't think it's a thing he should be complaining about. And again, I don't think he is.
The other reason that I think this is particularly frustrating for LeBron is not only because he was a bad free throw shooter last year. This year he's almost at his career high, a couple hundredths of a percentage point off his career high. So that's something he thinks I deserve to be getting to the line. I worked on him shooting almost 80% this year. But the other thing is, a knock on LeBron has been late in games he settles. Late in games he's settling for jump shots. Well, what did he try to do late in game on Christmas Day? Drive twice. What happened? Fouled twice. What happened? 2 turnovers on him in the books, or a turnover and a missed shot. So sometimes you're damned if you, damned if you don't. Like, maybe one of the reasons he's been settling is he knows late in games that refs swallow their whistle more, plus he's not getting the calls, so I got to settle for these jump shots.
Well, one thing is, the refs are human, and LeBron, he shouldn't be penalized for his body and how he's taking care of his body. But because he dribbles the ball so much, it's hard to referee a guy that at normal contact, it knocks a guy away from the bucket. So his ability and his physical size, it works against him because they will allow a certain amount of contact because it doesn't affect him like the other players. That's part of who he is. That's the part that makes him special. But the refs are human. It's not like they start the game and say, you know something, we're going to make it hard on this guy. Because of his skill set and because of his greatness, it is harder to referee him.
You brought up a key point. They don't think when he gets bumped and it doesn't knock him off his path, they don't think it's giving the defense an advantage.
Yes,
and that's a
key
big
word.
part of what officials think. That's why they let you come up the court palming the ball like this, because they recognize that doesn't give you any advantage.
That's why sometimes they wait to call a foul until they see if the shot was missed.
Yes.
Right. Now, they might have called the foul on LeBron on the first drive if LeBron didn't lose control of the ball. LeBron lost control of the ball, then the contact.
Yeah. And I get it. It was probably especially frustrating to him on Christmas Day because this was the matchup.
And he plays
Kevin
the right
Durant,
way.
LeBron James.
It's late
to your
in the game.
point, he goes to the bucket.
Yes.
And now what were a lot of people saying? Durant shut LeBron down. He's better than LeBron now. That is a big part of it too. LeBron got fouled. He should have went to the line.
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.